The downward spiral for the Buccaneers continues, but I'm going to tell you why Todd Bowles is not keeping his job. That and more on today's episode of Locked On Bucs.
You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, and welcome into today's episode of Locked On Bucs, your daily podcast covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. I'd like to thank you for making Locked On Bucs your first listener view every day. I am your host, James Yarcho, writer over at Bucs Report, here with you every Monday through Friday, along with the everydayers. And for that, I want to share my appreciation for your continued support of the show. I'm going to begin to break down the numerous reasons this season has gone down the drain and talk about what is going to potentially be the only playoff game that the Bucs will have this season as they host the Panthers. That's all coming up in a little bit, but I feel like this episode needs to start with something that was circulating social media Sunday before the games, and I am 100% guilty of retweeting it, but it had Bucs fans buzzing well before kickoff against the Dolphins, and that is a report from Rapoport of NFL Network. So Rapoport came on the Good Morning Football, or the game day morning pregame show on NFL Network, and he had something to say about Todd Bowles. Ian said, quote, "For the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, it has been a rough couple months. They have lost 6 of their last 7 games and face a must-win against the Miami Dolphins today to keep their playoff hopes alive. Yes, this has led to some questions about head coach Todd Bowles. So let me answer some questions before they begin. Todd Bowles received a 3-year contract extension before the season started and is under contract through 2028. They won 3 straight division titles and still have the possibility of winning their 4th. Does that Rich, meaning Rich Eisen, sound like someone that should be in trouble? I would say certainly not." End quote. Let me repeat part of that for you so you can really grasp what was said. Quote, "Todd Bowles received a 3-year contract extension before the season started and is under contract through 2028. They won 3 straight division titles and still have the possibility of winning their 4th. Does that, Rich, sound like someone that should be in trouble? I would say certainly not." End quote. Now, let me translate this for those that didn't catch it or aren't reading between the lines. Nowhere in that quote does Rapoport say, "My sources tell me," or "I have been told," or "word inside the building is." This is purely saying a lot without saying anything at all. This is either Rapoport just throwing something out there, or it's Todd Bowles' PR team. Maybe he has the same PR team as Mike McDaniel, since there was spin about him last week before the games, but it's basically trying to extinguish a fire before it begins. The Buccaneers gave Tony Dungy a contract extension right before he was fired. They gave John Gruden a contract extension right before he was fired. This would not be the first time in Bucs history, let alone NFL history, that a coach was awarded an extension, crapped the bed, and lost his job while still under contract. This is a results-driven business, and the results of this season are that Todd Bowles is not doing a good job. A lot of the players are not doing a good job, but it starts at the top with Bowles. Then you go down the list to Josh Grizzard, to McGahee, and so on. Yes, he has won 3 straight division titles as head coach, but he's also 1-3 in the postseason. Since that segment aired, the Bucs have now lost 7 of their last 8, including 4 in a row. Under Todd Bowles, they lost 5 of 6 last season. They started 4-7 the year before. This is not new. This is not an outlier. It's just that this is the first time that they haven't been able to snap out of it. You have players blowing up at each other on the sidelines. You have guys yelling and pointing at one another on a field after giving up touchdowns. You have guys ripping into one another, walking back to the locker room after a loss. This is not a good environment. This is a full-blown 5-alarm disaster. And look, Ian Rapoport is great. He does amazing work. He's incredibly personable. I love the opportunities that I've had to speak with him. I am not in any way trying to discredit what he does. But if you go back and you think about who broke the Godwin news, who broke the Mike Evans news, who broke the Bruce Arians news, the Tom Brady news, it's not him. It's never him. Not when it comes to the Bucs. It's either Adam Schefter or Rick Stroud. Occasionally, Scott Reynolds over at Pewter Report, he's able to land something. Occasionally, it's been Greg Allman. But the main two for the biggest stories surrounding the Bucs, it's Adam Schefter or it's Rick Stroud. Those are the guys that tend to break those kinds of stories, which is what leads me to believe that this is Todd Bowles' personal PR spin. I go back to the line, does that sound like someone that should be in trouble? I would say certainly not. That is a personal spin by Ian Rapoport on a non-news story to try to give Bowles positive press. This is not a news story at all. This was Bowles might be in some hot water, but I personally think he should be safe, spun as inside information. I also think about him rattling off division titles, as part of the resume. And I wonder how many coaches have won 3 straight division titles and then lost 7 out of 8 games over the course of the second half of a season and still got to keep their job. None would be my guess. I didn't do a deep dive into the history of NFL coaching and guys that have won 3 straight divisions and what they did in that 4th season, but I think it's a pretty safe guess that without extremely extenuating circumstances, those coaches would have been let go. And I've said it before, this is an ownership that fired Tony Dungy for not getting far enough in the playoffs. This is an ownership group that fired Gruden for losing 4 straight at the end of a season to finish 9-7, but they missed the playoffs. They were 9-3. They missed the playoffs. If the Bucs lose against Carolina, that would be 5 straight losses to end the season after starting 6-2, and you're missing the playoffs for the first time since 2019. And on no planet is that not a fireable offense. I don't care what the excuses are. I don't care what the reasons are. You cannot keep your job after that. When I was a chef, if I had gone 7 out of 8 Saturday night services giving people food poisoning for undercooked chicken, I'm not getting the benefit of the doubt for all the Saturdays I didn't poison people. I'm getting fired for not doing my job. Bowles can throw all the shade at all the players that he wants to. And there is some truth to the frustrations that he is airing out to the media. But at the end of the day, it falls on him to have this team better prepared or to put players out on the field that know what they're doing. And after that debacle against the Miami Dolphins, following that report, I couldn't let it go without addressing it because things only got worse on Sunday. They're not getting better anytime soon. This season has been filled with questions and no answers. It is the Buccaneers version of the show Lost. Every single Sunday, we end up with 85 more questions and no answers to the questions that we had the week before. And at some point, you have to say enough is enough. The NFL stands for not for long. And when you start 6-2 and you're on the cusp of finishing 7-10, you're not for long for this league. But what are the failings of this team? How did it get to this point? Beyond the coach, the first finger gets pointed to the quarterback, and I'm going to do exactly that coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. The holiday season is one of the best times for sports. Bowl games, big basketball matchups, playoff pushes, it's all happening at once. And while you're all making choices every day, one of the most fun places to make the right call is PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the easiest way to get in on daily fantasy. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player projections, lock in your lineup, and you're in the game. It's simple, fast, and available in 45 states. Creating a lineup takes less than a minute, and the app makes the whole process smooth and intuitive. The new Stacks feature actually lets you choose the same player up to 3 times in one lineup, like more on Baker Mayfield's passing yards, touchdowns, and rushing yards. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. Thank you again for making Locked On Bucs your first listen review every day, and thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. If you're a true diehard Buccaneers fan, then the Everyday or All Access tier is built for you. You'll get one-on-one text access with me, all access episodes, an exclusive newsletter, and a 15% discount to the Locked On merch store. Head to lockedonbucks.supercast.com to join the Everydayer Club and unlock all access. You can also find the link in the show notes. And real quickly, I want to apologize to everybody for not doing the live show Sunday evening as planned. I had a memorial service for a friend of mine that passed away. Things ran a little bit longer than I anticipated, but we're here with you now on this Monday, reacting to everything that has transpired over the course of the last really 48 hours. And look, I love Baker. You all know that I love Baker. Most of you still do too, but he is not healthy. And he should have sat down for a couple of weeks about a month back, probably following the Buffalo game up until the Saints game. He's a mess. You have a quarterback dealing with an oblique and a knee injury on his right side. He's got a shoulder injury on his left side and what appears to be an ankle or a knee injury on his left side. And these injuries were no more evident than on his first interception against the Dolphins on Sunday. He was flat-footed. He didn't step into it. He didn't get any velocity on the ball, and it was underthrown. And instead of it being probably a touchdown pass, if not a touchdown, then a huge gain to Jalen McMillan, it's an interception. That second pick, that Baker threw on the pass that was intended for Ibuka, that was just an incredible defensive play. You gotta tip your cap. Baker got baited into that one. He took it hook, line, and sinker. It was one of the more impressive defensive plays that I have seen this season. Baker's warrior mentality is awesome. It makes him who he is. It makes him the player the Buccaneers fans fell in love with. It makes him the guy that got the $100 million extension after his first season with the team. But sometimes it's best not to enable it. When you see him struggling to scramble, when you see him struggling to throw the deep ball, to get velocity on his passes, it's time to sit him down. He is never going to tell you that he's hurt and he can't play. He's never going to tell you that he can't push through it. That's just who he is as a player, as a leader, as a person. But that's also a big reason why the interceptions by Baker have skyrocketed over the course of this losing streak. It's a big reason why the Bucs are going to finish with a losing record. It would not surprise me at all if this winds up like a Tampa Bay Lightning report. Some of you watch hockey, you know exactly where I'm going with this. But for those that don't, you get to the end of the season, whether it's the Stanley Cup Finals, whenever a hockey team is eliminated from playoff contention and they get to the end of their year, you hear about this player who has been playing with a broken leg, or this player tore his ACL, or this player has to have surgery on that thing. It happens every single year, and you hear about these guys that have been playing through these injuries for months on end. We're going to find out once the season is over that Baker's going to have surgery on something and that he was fighting through it. Now, that's my own speculation. I have not been informed of this by anyone, but I think anyone watching him with an analytical eye can see that he is not the same physically as he was last year or the year before. Another reason that this team is losing is Josh Grizzard. I hate to say it. I had faith, I had optimism, but it's become more evident than ever that he is in over his head and he has no idea how to feed all of the mouths that he has on offense. Last week, it was a stubborn, to the detriment of the team, commitment to the run. This week, it was ignoring the run game altogether. McMillan had a great game. Godwin had a great game thanks to that big 60-yard catch and run that he had inside the 2-minute warning. But Mike wasn't getting catchable targets. Abuka had like 2 snaps before halftime, and one of them, he was in there to block for the run game. There was no rhyme or reason to anything on that offense outside of the first drive. There seemed to be no reasoning for the way that they were doing substitutions. The player packages were constantly changing in and out. They had absolutely no rhythm. They couldn't find a rhythm. And then when they started to find one, they'd get a penalty and shoot themselves in the foot. In the last couple of weeks, you've seen it. When the game starts, both sides of the ball look solid. The scripted plays for the offense, it looks great. They march right down the field and put points on the board. The defense tends to start off relatively well. Then it gets to the in-game situations. It gets to dialing up plays to beat your opponent and playing that chess match against the opposing coordinator, and Grizz is lost. The defense, they make one mistake and things snowball from there. It's been going on for weeks. Jonathan Vilma on the broadcast said that he thought it was smart for the Bucs to punt on 4th and short near midfield with the game tied 7-7 because Jamel Dean made just one mistake, and other than that, the defense looked fine. We all knew what that mistake was going to mean, and we all knew that if they punted, they would never see the lead again. It's the snowball effect that this defense has put on full display, where as soon as one thing goes wrong, the entire house of cards comes crashing down and they cannot get a stop to save their lives. The injuries across the board are what they are. The offensive line is putrid without Tristan Wirfs, Ben Bredesen, and Cody Mauch. The pass rush is non-existent for about 98% of the snaps. Every once in a while, Yaya Diaby will get back there. He'll get a sack. And then somehow the opposing offense is going to convert on 3rd and 16. The linebackers in coverage are among the worst in the league. There was a stat that they showed during the broadcast that the Bucs had allowed a league worst 807 receiving yards to running backs this season. That number is now up to 836 and is still the worst in the NFL. Yes, a lot of this is on coaching, but this defense needs a makeover in a bad way. And it goes beyond just scheme. The offense, they just need their offensive line back and somebody that knows how to manage in-game and call plays. The defense needs an overhaul. That's supposed to be Todd Bowles' specialty, and it gets worse each and every week. You have to look at coaching. Players got to play. Players have to execute, but you have to trust your coaches, your coordinators, to put them in a position where they're going to be the most successful. And we have not seen that out of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in 2 months. The Bucs are getting ready to play a playoff game, sort of, and it's a standalone game to start week 18, which is nightmare fuel for Buccaneers fans. That is coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs. Let's be real. No one starts a business for the joy of calculating tax withholdings or managing payroll spreadsheets. That's where Gusto comes in, to take the stress out of payroll, benefits, and HR so you can focus on running your business and supporting your team. Gusto is the all-in-one remote-friendly payroll and HR platform that makes managing your team simple, transparent, and fast. Whether you're hiring, onboarding, or paying employees, Gusto helps you do it all from one place without the hassle or hidden fees. You get unlimited payroll runs for one monthly price, which means no surprise charges at the end of the month, and Gusto's automated tools like offer letters, onboarding materials, and direct deposits can save you hours every single week. Try Gusto at gusto.com/lockedonnfl and get 3 months free when you run your first payroll. That's right, 3 months of free payroll at gusto.com/lockedonnfl. One more time, that's gusto.com/lockedonnfl. Ripping things up here on a Monday edition of the Locked On Bucs podcast. And late Sunday night, the NFL released the Week 18 schedule, and they are, kicking off the week with the showdown between the Bucs and the Panthers that should decide the NFC South. Now, the caveat to that is if the Falcons beat the Rams Monday night, then we'll have to wait until the Falcons-Saints game on Sunday to decide the winner of the division should the Bucs beat the Panthers. But more than likely, this game will decide who is winning the division and hosting a playoff game. The Bucs are at home, which you would think would be a good thing, except for the fact that they're 3-4 at home this year. And on top of that, it's a standalone game at 4:30 on a Saturday. In standalone games this season, the Bucs are 1-3, having only beaten the Texans on Monday night back in week 2. That's not great. Look, nothing about the way that this team has played should give anyone confidence that they can go out there and win this game. They have been saying the same tired nonsense for weeks. It could be Todd Bowles, could be Josh Grizzard, could be Baker Mayfield, could be Levante David, could be Mike Evans, could be anybody. Name any player that has spoken to the media, and it's the same thing. We know our backs are against the wall. We know this is a must win. We know that we control our own destiny. We just have to execute. We just have to take care of our own business. We know we beat ourselves, on and on and on. It's the same tired, cliche rhetoric after every practice, after every game. They've known this all for 2 months. And they've still gone out there and performed the way that they have. The Panthers, on the other hand, have alternated wins and losses every game for the last 10 games. And guess what? Week 18 would be what you call a win week after they lost to Seattle on Sunday. Again, does not bode well for the Bucs. This all goes back to coaching. And I hate to continue to beat that drum and for you guys to listen to this record skip over and over and over, but it goes back to coaching. It goes back to leadership. It goes back to execution. You've known what was at stake. You could have handled your own business for the last month and not be in this position. You came out of the bye still in a position where you were competing for the top seed in the conference. Now you're competing to win the division with a losing record? For the second time in 4 years, the second time in Todd Bowles' tenure, you're trying to win a division while finishing below 500. First time around, we all kind of gave Bowles a pass. He was promoted late in the process. He had to use all of Arians' old staff, so he didn't get to pick his own people. Byron Leftwich was a terrible offensive coordinator without Bruce Arians babysitting him and vetoing him. And then you had Tom Brady, who was going through all of the divorce stuff. It was a mess. So he got a pass. Then he improves his win total each of the next 2 years. He wins a playoff game. Things are trending up. And then this season happened. So why should anyone buy into a narrative that has been on repeat for the last 8 weeks that the Bucs are going to be ready for this must-win game? Why should anyone believe that they are finally going to figure out what's been going wrong and fix it over the course of the next 5 days? You haven't fixed it over 2 months. How are you going to fix it in 5 days? What possible explanation could there be for that to happen when it has not happened, while they know what's going wrong, while they know what's at stake, and still they only exceed the expectations we have for what knuckleheaded way they're going to blow a game. This is, without a doubt, the most disappointing season since 2003. Truly, I think it is. I know I brought up 2008 before. I brought it up earlier in the show because of the collapse, the parallels to that. But in terms of sheer disappointment, in failing to come close to meeting expectations, this is up there with 2003. And for those of you that weren't around watching then, or you were too young to remember, that was the defending champions coming off of a dominant Super Bowl win over the Raiders with the new young hotness at head coach and John Gruden. All the players are back. You open the year Monday night against the Eagles in their new house, and you beat them again. You just shut down the vet 6 months ago, and now you're opening the link with another win over the Eagles. But then the Colts game happened. That Monday night implosion on Tony Dungy's birthday in his return to Ray J, where you blow a 4-score lead with 6 minutes left in the game. The wheels completely fell off that team after that. It was you had injuries pile up, but that game was the catalyst and the wheels fell off. This year, you could point to the Lions game. You go into that game 5-1. They're talking about this is an NFC championship preview. You get Mike Evans back. He breaks his collarbone and the wheels fall off. Offense couldn't do anything all night long. Detroit did whatever they wanted. And the Bucs never recovered. Back in 2003, that Monday night game against the Colts, that started a continuous cycle of bouncing between first place and last place while not winning any playoff games. This season had Super Bowl aspirations coming in. They got stronger through the first 6 weeks. You had an MVP favorite under center. And you thought, who cares that the Bucs lost Liam Cohen? Baker is on fire. Now here we are on the cusp of 2026 with nothing left but false hope and frustration and a whole lot of questions about what direction this franchise is going in. That's going to do it for this episode. I want to thank you for tuning in to today's episode of Locked On Bucs. We will have more reaction to everything that's going on regarding this final week of win or go home. Please make sure you're subscribed on YouTube, as well as wherever you get your podcasts. You can follow on Twitter at Locked On Bucs, at @Yarcho_Bucs, Instagram and TikTok at Locked On Bucs in both of those places. Become a Everydayer Club All Access member, LockedOnBucs.supercast.com. The link is in the show notes. If you don't want to be an All Access member, but you want to be an insider and still do the texting, you can do that. Join subtext.com/LockedOnBucs or click the link in the show notes. You want to support the show, but you don't want to join either of those clubs? It's real simple. Like this episode on YouTube, leave a 5-star review wherever you get podcasts. It does help other Buccaneers fans find the show. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding day. Stay safe, stay healthy, fire the cannons. I want to thank you so much for joining me right here on Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.